Well, these are all thoughts and concepts that there's a reason why we invited this fantastic array of speakers to kick off this year's conference, to get us all thinking. And personally, I have lots of little kind of little bubbles in my head sort of beginning to grow and shape, and I can see them kind of melding together and beginning to form some of those thoughts. And hopefully when you look at the agenda for what we've put together for the rest of the week, you're going to see a whole load of other speakers where you think, okay, I can see why this person might be connected to that person. How do some of these ideas, how do some of these thoughts evolve? So that the big challenge for Ludovine and myself anyways, by the time we arrive at the end of our Friday session, we can roll it all together and put a nice big bow on the top of it. But just before we finish for today, Doris, I know that you've got your hand up. I will come to you first. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do a loop around our speakers who are still with us and say, okay, so as a community of interested stakeholders in this world of raw materials, which to be honest includes all 8 billion of us on this planet, because we all need raw materials in some format, what can we be doing to help you as individuals push forward your innovation and your ideas? But Doris, let's come to yourself first, and then I'm going to go to Terry.
Yeah, I was just going to make a quick comment to the previous discussion, then I can come to this. And just briefly, organization-wise, it's just permission to fail, to try new things, and live in the learning zone. That's it. And it starts from the leadership. So it's not that complicated. When we don't know the answer, it looks like the brain is designed to thrive in uncertainty, and that's when the juicy stuff comes. So anyway, now on the other side, to advance the subject I share, designing sustainable prosperity, the biggest obstacle is, again, we've always done things as we always done, and therefore we deal with things silo by silo. But so what's needed is financing to do the first step, to do the first pilot, financing. And there are many interested people in financing, but again, those are tied to specific things. You know, do an infrastructure, a road, power plant, or things like that, and not as a system approach to figure out, you know, the whole prospect of possibilities, opportunities for a region, and set the stage for the rest of the projects to be responsibly done as well.
Brilliant. Thank you very, very much, Doris. Absolutely fantastic. Terry, how about yourself? And then we'll go to Andy.
Just before I go there, just a couple of things. It seems to me, and I really did like your paper, Doris, that perhaps the whole idea of sustainable prosperity needs to start right at the beginning of a mine's history. So around about the time the exploration geologists or the mineral geologists have identified the deposit and the mine feasibility study is now beginning to emerge, that's when we should be thinking about designing sustainable prosperity right at the beginning, and change the language from environmental impact assessments or social impact assessments and start to bring in the language of sustainable prosperity. So that might be, you know, an avenue in for this kind of big picture thinking right at the beginning of a mine's life. And so that could be helpful. Yeah.
I was just going to add to that, Terry, that actually, so tomorrow morning's session has a number of speakers who will 1000% agree with what you just said. So they come from that world of exploration, and where before we've even put boots on the ground and we're just looking at maps and looking at data and thinking, well, hang on a second, we're not just thinking about the potential of the rocks. We're thinking about the potential of everything else in that interconnected ecosystem. So absolutely. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Terry.
No, it's perfect. No, I'm glad that sums up nice, because I'd like to now make a quick comment also to Ludovine, and that is that mining companies' financial history, you need to go back, I'm sure you have already, a couple of 100 years and realize that the financing models of big infrastructure projects in Britain, for example, like canals and railways, has always been much bigger than banks and banking could come up with, and tended to often come from the public. So the early years of big infrastructure projects are tied up with stocks and shares and stock markets. And the same with mining. Once mining became a colonial endeavor, money was raised in the host countries like England, and then spent in the colonial countries, the colonies. And so there's always been a resistance by the banks to invest large monies in mining. There's always been the capacity to raise money on stock exchanges for large mining things. And with that comes the inevitable, and Andy touched upon this, resistance to change. When you're mining in one country and paying back shareholders in another, it does create its own very strong constraints as to how much innovation you will allow yourself to have as a mining company. And so there's a long history of resistance to change in mining, and it goes back centuries. I think there's nothing new about that. And perhaps new models of mining, such as what Stephen was talking about earlier, may attract new models of investment. And I think that it ties in with the big picture of mining industry, and we need to support people like Stephen to expand the mining industry into words like regeneration and dealing with present mining wastes and so on. But look upon that also as an opportunity for new kinds of investment. So I thought that was a very fact too. Then back to myself, really, as I said in my paper, there's two angles to what we're trying to do here in artisanal mining. The one angle is the top-down approach. Anyone who has any ability to try and work with government, to try and work with local government, national government, international government, to try and change the narrative, is the favorite expression, around artisanal mining is welcome. But at the same time, don't try and lay down too much in the way of expectations from the miners themselves, unless we have an equal bottom-up approach, the one I was also arguing for in my talk. And the trouble right now is that the top-down people don't talk to the bottom-up people, and the bottom-up people don't know how to talk to the top-down people. And so there is this big gap. But the two models I talked about show where that gap overlaps. And I do hope that time will help artisanal mining to gain credibility and to become part of genuine, just transition that we were talking about as well. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Terry. Brilliant. Andy, any final words or things that we collectively can help you with or support you with? And then we'll finish with Ludovine.
Yeah, a couple of things. One, this conference has always been an early indicator of trends. And the trend that I'm seeing is people are starting to realize that the junior mining sector is in a much worse shape than the senior mining sector with regard to the challenges of responsible raw materials. And I think this has been overlooked because the junior mining sector doesn't produce. But in fact, it's where a lot of outcomes are de facto determined. And many of us, I think, are starting to realize we've got to shift to that sector, even though there's no money in it, in order to solve the problem. It is structurally broken. And I think we need to put our heads together and figure out how to do that. Certainly Inspire Resources, if you look at our website, it says that we're pivoting. That's what we're pivoting towards, is to figure out how can we enable in this crazy atomized collection of lifestyle exploration companies, how can we enable something more effective to emerge and enable the investors and the proponents to find each other in that chaotic marketplace? So I see potential for us to collaborate on that. And that brings me to my point of what can we do? First of all, don't lose hope. So if you are in the system change sector, you are part of a very small percentage of people who see the big picture. And you carry a burden on behalf of society, which is your ability to see that. And you will never get to where you would like to go. I'm sad to say we can only contribute to moving in the right general direction. But if we withdraw ourselves from the fight, we won't do that. And it is the job of forums like this to bring us together and allow us to find the sense of community that keeps us going. One of the reasons I moved back here to Edmonton is because it has a thriving startup community. And when I started mixing amongst those optimistic entrepreneurial people and their impossible dreams, I received succor that I didn't realize I had been missing. It was a fantastic thing. And we're going to have to do this across a very globally distributed small group of inspirational people who can see a different way to do things, and we're going to have to work together. That's why I'm here.
Awesome. Inspirational. Thank you very, very much, Andy. Ludovine, final words from yourself.
Goodness, it's quite hard. First, my final words will be to thank all of the speakers, because what they're sharing with us, as Andy was saying, is a sense that there is a great deal of opportunity and that each of us can play a role. I do think that the more we bring back to these conversations some of the tools that we work with most efficiently, the better we can actually define new solutions. What do I mean by that is I do think that the purpose and the value of governance, whether we're talking corporate governance or mineral governance, the whole notion of stewardship, whether we're talking investment stewardship or natural resources stewardship, all of these principles of fairness, of accountability, and of defining shared principles which guide action, I think all those still serve very well. So as much as innovation is the need, I do think some of the tools are already there, and it's a question of projecting them into defining either a new paradigm or new solutions or new linkages.
Thank you, Ludovine. Brilliant. So with that, everybody, in an attempt to try and encapsulate what we have heard already today, we started off today with Ludovine setting the scene and saying, okay, why on earth did we choose critical choices as being the theme of this year's conference? And as Andy said, often what gets discussed here, quite by chance, I should say, actually does help to shape some of the discussions that then seem to take place at other conferences throughout the year as well, which is absolutely brilliant and fantastic to see. We then heard from Stephen, who was there talking about regeneration, and again, an example of rolling up your sleeves and saying, hang on a second, there is something to fix over here or an opportunity to be had. It might not be valued in the same way that we value a traditional resource, but actually let's look at that value from other directions. We then heard Doris describe her Design Sustainable Prosperity, which is absolutely brilliant. I encourage you all to go and buy her book when it comes out. I certainly shall be as well. And that integrated natural resource models, I think Doris and I will certainly be taking her discussion offline, because there's lots of synergy between diagrams that I showed last week in the UN and Doris's much more professional looking diagrams that she showed today. Absolutely brilliant. Then across to Terry, who really has stepped up and said, hang on a second, I might be an outside stakeholder with regards to this discussion, but I've gone, hang on, I can change this little bit in that interconnected model. Let's go do it. Absolutely fantastic. Thank you, Terry. And if there's anything we can do to help in terms of financing the bits of kit or anything like that, put your links in the chat. We'll make sure they're up on the websites as well. Then Jodie Ann came and joined us, and she not only showed us how some of those risks look different through the eyes of different stakeholders. Genius, that is what we mean by risk is in the eye of the beholder. but also different mechanisms that, say, investors can bring to the table. What does the world look like through their eyes? What do those systems look like through their eyes? And then we finished with Andy, who is an individual from whom, I don't know, Andy, every time I listen to you, there are more quotes that I could pluck from what you say. I think the one that has been resonating the most on chat is basically, at the end of the day, all sounds great, so long as my ideas aren't just a fart in a spacesuit, then I'd be absolutely great with regards to that as well. So thank you so much to all of you for setting the scene for this year's Responsible Raw Material Conference. A huge number of different ideas for us to go away and ponder overnight. Tomorrow morning, so session number 2, is where we're actually going to dive into that world of junior mining. We're going to jump into that world of exploration and say, hang on a second, how do we look at different models for exploration, different value propositions for exploration? What is it actually all about? And we've got some of the world leading experts when it comes to all of this. And it's not just talking about the rocks. We'll also be talking about ethics and trust as well. And then tomorrow afternoon, so session number 3, this is where we're really welcoming some of our civil society friends to come into the discussion and say, well, hang on a second, what do raw materials look like through their eyes? We've got talks that are entitled The Mine We All Want to See. So turn up and find out what that looks like. That's going to be really exciting. And then also as well, diving into the transparency of supply chains. So with that, everybody, thank you so much. Thank you. A massive thank you to our fantastic team of volunteers. We will see you tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. UK time. If that is a terrible time for you because it's the middle of the night, don't worry, you can catch up online because we're using technology and it's all going to be there on YouTube. Aren't we clever? Isn't that fantastic? But with that, please continue to engage and we'll see you all tomorrow. Thank you very much, everyone. See you soon.